Well, hey, I'm John Burke, author of the New York Times bestselling book, Imagine Heaven and Imagine the God of Heaven. And this is the Imagine Heaven live series that I'm doing in between seasons of the Imagine Heaven podcast. So if you haven't listened to the 10 episodes in season one, I hope you'll go back and check that out based on the research I've done with near-death experiences and how they relate to the Bible. But in this live series, while I'm in another writing project, I'm letting you hear from some of the interviews that I'm doing, even as I'm researching. And that's one of the ones today. Steve and Kathy Boyls are an engineer and a medical doctor. And during COVID, Steve, who's the engineer, actually was in a medically induced coma due to COVID and many other complications that happen. And he had a near-death experience. And what you're going to hear is just going to blow you away. It did me, and I've heard a lot of them, but it was one of the most complete experiences of heaven that just reminds us that the life to come is everything as good as this life and so much more. And I want you to keep asking as you hear this, because sometimes you're going to be like, there's no way. But keep asking, why would they make this up? Why would an engineer and a doctor make something like this up? Not for money. They don't need money. Doesn't help their careers. And yet, as Steve says, it was more real than this. Hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, there.
Hey, Steve and Kathy Boyls, how are you guys doing?
Good. How are you doing? Glad to be here.
Doing great. I am so excited for people to hear your story of this incredible near-death experience that you had, Steve. But Kathy, you were a big part of it as well. You're a medical doctor, and you were there in the throes of all that happened, as I understand.
Yes, I certainly was, and it was a fight of faith, a good fight of faith.
Well, why don't you just dive in and tell us what happened that day? And I'd love to hear, the full experience.
Start. Well, on December 9 of 2021, Steve was admitted to the ICU. He spent 45 days on a ventilator. He was intubated on December 14th, and he spent 3.5 months in the hospital. During that time, he had a supernatural experience. I wasn't aware of it, of course, and I was praying and believing God, learning more and more how to use my faith. So God was so faithful, and Steve is alive and well, totally healed. Praise God.
Wow. Well, what happened? What got you there, Steve?
Well, I initially went to the hospital, the emergency room with COVID. We all had COVID, me, Kathy, and our daughter, Stacy. We all had COVID. I seemed to have it the worst, but Kathy had a really splitting headache. And so she was really having a hard time focusing on helping me. So they thought it'd just be better to take me to the hospital to see if they could do something for me, because I was not comfortable. I don't care what position I was in. I was miserable. And then I was having a little bit of difficulty breathing. So I went to the emergency room. But then after I got to the emergency room and got checked in, they basically told my daughter, no, you can't come in. And they basically sent her back out to the car. And then my daughter told Kathy, we can't go in. So then they put me up into the emergency room, ICU. And then I was there, and that was on the December 9th. And then I went in and got on the ventilator on the 14th.
Wow. And you said this is the beginning of COVID, like 2020, 2021?
This was December of 2021.
Okay.
So it'd been going on for a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, and so they wouldn't allow me to see him for 20 days. There was a committee that made an arbitrary decision that it would be 20 days before I could go in and visit him in person. And so that was very concerning to me, because normally I'm pretty good at taking care of my family as a physician and watch over everything that's going on. And I did not have the ability to do that. And so what I did have the ability to do was to pray God's word and to send the angelic host to Steve to watch over him.
Hmm.
So that's what we did.
So you guys were believers, you were followers of Jesus at the time it happened?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so what brought on the near-death experience?
Well, they put me on the ventilator. And of course, at that point in time, I'm pretty much out of it. I was in a medically induced coma, and I was paralyzed, unconscious. And I guess some of the stuff they did, I got kidney failure and a few other problems. And so they were just thinking, well, they said that they were putting me on the ventilator to help me get over the COVID, although I don't think I was under, I think I might have been, more going down, getting away from the COVID stuff. But they put me on the ventilator anyway. And it was while I was on the ventilator and knocked out in a coma that I got visited by an angel who he basically came up to me and he said, your spirit man never sleeps, never dies. It's awake all the time, whether we're paying attention to it or not. And this angel comes up to me and says, "Hello, Steve. My name is Marzuka. You spell that Marzuka, and I'm here to take you to heaven for a little while your body heals."
Really? Oh
yes.
my God.
And so I'm like, well, sure.
And I just have to point out to my audience listening that you're a software engineer, right?
Yes.
And so you got a medical doctor and a software engineer. And I always like to point out, like, a lot of the people I interview have nothing to gain making up these crazy stories of dying and going to heaven and seeing angels and Jesus and all this.
Yeah, I had a perfectly good, quiet life before all this happened. So,
a good career, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm pretty logical in everything that I have to do with software because, I got a minor in math. So, I feel I'm fairly logical about things and I analyze things and I try to figure things out, problem solving, because that's what software engineering is.
Yeah.
And so when all this is happening, I'm just like, well, this is like wild. I've never had any thought or desire or anything like this.
And are you still yourself? You still feel like yourself?
Do I feel like I was before I went to the hospital?
Well, no, like when this angel comes and says, we're going to take a trip.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was me. I didn't think, oh, this is my spirit man and rising up. And I was just, okay. I just felt like it was me just kind of going up. Now, it was my spirit man leaving my body and kind of like sitting up and just rising on up. But I felt me, I don't know.
Did you see your physical body or did you just go?
No, because it was like going straight, kind of like sitting up out of bed and then just keep going up. So, no, I never looked down, never looked around. I kept my eye on the angel and because I'm following him, so that's.
And what did he look like?
He, I guess, after being around him for a little while in heaven, I'd say he was about 6'2" and kind of broad shouldered, had longer hair parted in the middle, kind of straight, maybe just a tad wave to it. But, he looked like he was well built, and I'm glad he was my angel.
Did you find that out? Was he like, did he say something?
Yes,
like
in conversations with me, I had a lot of conversations with him, and he told me he was my guardian angel, that he'd been with me since I was born, and that, he'd saved my life more times than I'll ever know.
Wow. That's amazing.
So, yeah, I'm like, whoa, so I got to talk to him and ask him a lot of questions. Maybe not the kind of questions everybody else might ask him, but I got the ones that satisfied me. So,
and Kathy, while this is going on, did you know that Steve had actually died physically?
No, he never died physically. He was in a medically induced coma on the ventilator. So physically died.
So it wasn't a clinical death. And this is interesting because people sometimes ask me, why did they call it a near-death experience? And though many are clinically dead, like no heartbeat, no brain waves, some are near death. and yet they have the same experience. And so it sounds like that was your experience.
He was put on 3 sedatives and a paralytic so that he could be on the ventilator. And that's a medically induced coma. So it's similar to being under anesthesia if you were having a surgery. So
Okay.
you're not dead, you're on a ventilator, but you're not able to communicate because you're in a coma.
Yeah.
And as I like to describe it, if you've ever seen the movie Princess Bride, there's a line where they take Wesley, the hero, to Miracle Max, and Miracle Max says, well, he's mostly dead, but a little bit alive. So I got something that I can work with. So
is that
my experience is like I was mostly dead, but a little bit alive.
Wow. Well, so tell us what then happened as you followed this angel.
Well, I mean, it was a pretty quick trip to heaven. You know, the Bible says that we're absent from the body is in the presence of the Lord. So it doesn't take a long time to get to heaven. It's pretty much instantaneous, but you can see a lot going from here to there because I saw, and you got to understand that your spiritual eyes have a much broader light. They can see a broader range of light spectrum. So I was able to see, stuff in space that you only see in Hubble Space Telescope pictures and stuff like that with the gas formations and stuff like that, which I was just like, this is crazy. This is wild. This is beautiful. This is God's creation, but we can actually see without the use of a telescope.
And you were experiencing that you are moving through our universe.
Yes. And
but like in another dimension?
I don't know that I would say it was another dimension, at least not initially, because I could see things like shooting by me. Like we were going like way fast and they're just like buzzing by. And I don't know that I would say that I was in another dimension. Well, I guess because of the fact that I was in my spirit man, I am in another dimension automatically.
Right.
So I was in the spiritual world dimension, but I can tell you everything was in the spiritual world was just as solid or more real than it was here on earth. Yeah. And I know people have a hard time when I tried to describe that, but that's just what only thing I can say is that heaven's more real than earth, Well,
you're not alone. I mean, I've interviewed and studied about 1,500 cases like yours. And that's one of the most common things is like, this is the shadow. That's the real thing.
Right.
It's more real than this. So
yes, exactly.
Yeah. So what were you seeing? That's fascinating. What were you seeing in outer space?
Well, like I said, the biggest thing that you could really see was just the, so if you've seen pictures of like the Hubble Space Telescope, they've got all I saw that. I mean, that was pretty amazing. You can't see that without a Hubble Space Telescope. Unless if you're here on Earth, you got to use that. And
you mean like that picture of the cradle of the universe kind of thing?
Just all
the
these
gases going up. And,
yes, exactly that. You're seeing that kind of stuff. And
I have to just say, because some people think like, oh, this is nuts. But Heidi Barr, who I interviewed, said Jesus took her. And they were flying the same way through outer space. And when she came back and she noticed the same things, she was in a college class, an astronomy class, and they went to an observatory and trained on Andromeda. And when she gets up and looks in, she almost fainted.
Oh, wow.
Because she was like, I saw that. I was there with Jesus going past that. And she had said, wow, this is what God wakes up to every morning. She was 16. So
yeah, I just don't. I don't think people realize how amazing God is with His creation and everything. In fact, one of the things that Marzuka, the angel, my guardian angel, told me, he said that God has never stopped creating things. He's still creating, and it will probably take eternity for us to see everything that He's created.
Wow. So that's pretty exciting.
Well, it is. It is because you're not going to have any dull days in heaven. I can promise you that. You're going to have a lot of bad days if you're not in heaven, but you're not going to have any dull ones in heaven.
Yeah. So after that, where did you see you were going, or did you?
Well, it was like I said, it was pretty quick. I couldn't like point in the direction of heaven and tell you where it is located in the sky, but I just know we were there. We were suddenly there and on the ground. And we landed in kind of a grassy area, and right outside of that right next to the grassy area was this building, which it kind of sounds kind of corny, but it's the best way I can describe it is like a welcome center. And so we went in. There was a guy behind this very ornate wood carved type desk. And he told me, "Welcome to heaven, Steve." He goes, "Marzuka is going to be your guide, and he's going to show you the things in heaven that you need to see." Well, one thing that I had noticed on the walls of the welcome center, there was like 4 scenes. One of them was a mountain scene, a valley scene, a meadow scene, and then more of like a kind of like a beach type scene is the best way.
And these are like paintings, or what are they?
They're like more like carvings into the wall.
Okay.
And I kind of tend to think that those were there just for me. And I still don't know the significance of going to those places. And I didn't realize I was going to those places. But after I'd been there, I'd say, "Oh, I saw this picture in the Welcome Center. Oh, I saw this scene in the Welcome Center." So it was kind of like I'm seeing all these things of places that I'm going. Kind of like, you go to a travel agency and they got pictures of the Colosseum and the Eiffel Tower and Rome and places like that, and visit these places type things. And that's kind of what it was.
It's like a preview.
Kind of like a preview, yeah.
And what was this building like that you were in?
It was very nice. It was when you walked in, it had this like huge. It was a fairly big room. It had high ceilings, and it had like a chandelier hanging from the ceiling that it had, I don't know, 10 or 12 arms around, kind of U-shaped, and on the end were these huge like jewels, like diamonds and rubies and emeralds, all different, type of big precious stones, except they were like the size of footballs. I mean, they were huge. I would love to have brought one back, but I didn't have a place to put it. So anyway, and they glowed, and they kind of like gave the room light.
Huh.
But, there was no shadows. There's no shadows. No shadows in heaven. I didn't see any clouds either, because God is the light of heaven.
And you saw that?
Yes. Yeah, it was amazing.
So I'm just curious, Kathy, the first time you heard Steve talking about this, what was your reaction?
Well, the first thing that he remembered was something he saw when he was in the throne room. But he didn't realize that he saw it when he was in the throne room. He just told me, and this is like 3.5 months into his hospital stay. He's getting ready to come home from the rehab hospital, the 3rd hospital. And he said, "I can remember a couple pictures of myself that I saw when I was knocked out." And so he described them. So I thought, well, didn't you see the ventilator? Because I thought, well, if he'd come out of his body, he'd see the hospital bed and the ventilator and all the monitors and all of that stuff. But he didn't see any of that. He said, "Nope, all I saw was my body, and here's what it looked like." So I thought, well, that's kind of weird. The only thing I could think of was, well, maybe he was looking through a portal or something. I don't know, because he didn't see any other objects in the room. He just saw his body laying down. So that was the first thing. And then, I just prayed about it, and I thought, well, Lord, did you take him somewhere and show him something? But then one time we were driving to church, this is after he was already home. And he said, when I went into that coma, there was an angel that came about 18 inches from my face. And he said, "Hi, my name is Marzuka. You spell that Marzuka. I'm here to take you to heaven for a little while your body heals." And I'm like, "What did you say?" What? It was so out of character for him because when I really have been interested in, heaven and all this stuff. My mom died in 2018. My dad went to heaven in 2009. So after my mom died in 2018, I got every book I could find about heaven, including yours. And I read them all. And I, just devoured everything. And I would always take the books and say, hey, read this. This is really interesting. You might like this. Nope, I'm not interested. I'll go to heaven someday, and I'm not interested in reading any books.
Real soon.
Yeah, I know. I get Jesse Duplantis, he went to heaven, he had a vision of heaven, whatever, and you want to watch it with me? No, don't want to do that. No. So it is so out of character for him to say something like this. And he's not real big on spelling, so, he'll ask me how to spell something. So I'm like, the fact that he would tell me something, tell me the spelling of it was really odd.
Well, you'd been with him since birth, so.
Exactly. But I mean, we've been married for 34 years, so I kind of know him, and I know that this is not something that he could make up. This is kind of really out there. So I thought, wow.
It wouldn't be like him personally, you mean, to make something like that up?
No, it wasn't. Yeah. And he wasn't ever interested in having stories at all. Nothing.
Well, when I said that I'd go to heaven someday, I meant like after I passed away. Okay.
Right.
Like not when I'm like in the middle of my life somewhere and then suddenly go there and come back.
Yeah.
And I had to really think about things and really kind of go through them. And before I told her anything, because I thought she's going to think I'm crazy. I wanted to make sure this is what I had really experienced because I want to be truthful about the whole thing. And, like I said, I had a nice, easy life before all this happened. I didn't need any crazy excitement, but, it did happen. And I think part of the reason it happened, God is, since I was like pretty, I'm not seeking anything. I think God wants to use he wants me to share what I experienced. And, so that's what I've tried to do since I came back. Just because first off, heaven's an amazing place. You need to know about it, and you need to know about it so you can plan to be there. And how do you plan to be there? You got to accept Jesus. So that's like the how do you get there? How do you get to heaven? Well, first you accept Jesus. So
get your ticket. Well, and you experienced a lot, talked through, after the Welcome Center, like some of the amazing things that you experienced, because I think one thing I think people don't realize is that heaven is life, right? It's going to be like life, except so much more. And we're going to have purposes and work and fun and enjoyment and friends and fellowship, all the things, and
exactly
seeing Hubble telescope type stuff.
Well, exactly. So we got to one of the first places we went to is like a big meadow. So it was like one of the things I saw on the wall. And
this is you in Marzuka?
Yes, Marzuka. Yeah, me and Marzuka. So we went to this meadow, which wasn't too far down the road from the Welcome Center, but it was an amazing place, just lush groupings of flowers, and the flowers, the colors were multicolored. When I say multicolored, I mean like the colors would like blend together, and it's not like a red flower or a yellow flower. They were like all colors all blended together. It was just beautiful. The grass was luscious. You could step on it and it'd spring right back up. It was really soft. You could probably sleep on it and have a great night's sleep if you slept in heaven. I saw my niece. Okay, so my niece she passed away about a week before she was supposed to get married. And so that was pretty tragic. And so when I got to see her, she looked beautiful. And everybody I saw looked like they were, in great shape. They were all looked young. Everybody looked like they were in their mid 20s to 30 years of age. And everybody looked healthy. Everybody had, if you're bald on earth, you'll have a full head of hair in heaven. That's all I can say, is because my dad.
That's good to know.
My dad had a lot of thin hair when he was on earth, but he had a full head of hair when I saw him. So I saw my mom and dad. I saw my.
And is this in this meadow? They came up to you?
Yeah, I'm kind of like jumping around, but
okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
But okay, so first I saw my dogs. We had a bunch of dogs, and I saw like 8 of them. And when they had all died old age and not in very good shape, they're all looking fantastic, amazing, healthy, beautiful, lush coats. We had a bunch of Huskies and Great Pyrenees. They just looked amazing. And I saw, and they know me. They came up to me. It's like everybody knew I was there. Everybody seemed to find me, which was made my life easy, I guess, or my trip up there. I didn't have to hunt anyone down, but like the dogs knew me and I got to play with them. And that was a lot of fun. And then I saw a friend of mine named Gary that I used to work with. And he was kind of tall. He was about 6'2", maybe 6'3". And he was he was overweight. Okay. He could have lost a few pounds, but I saw him in heaven. I said, "Hey, Gary, how do you like it here?" Which I know is kind of a silly question, but you've never been there. You're trying to find out what people are thinking, And he said, "Well, I love it here because I can eat whatever I want to and not gain any weight." And so that's a plus, You can eat what you want and you don't gain weight. And I got to eat a little bit of stuff while I was up there, and it was amazing. It tasted
really?
Yes.
Like what?
Well, I got to eat something that was like an apple, except it was like a round copper-colored fruit. That's the best I can describe it, except it's not as big as a grapefruit, and it tasted very, very similar to an apple. That was just amazing. And then I love vanilla ice cream. I know it's kind of bland maybe to some people, but I love it. And this was like I got to eat some of the best vanilla ice cream that I've ever had. I mean, it was just amazing.
Really?
Yes. And It doesn't melt. It didn't melt. So it's not like you have to keep licking it to keep it from dripping. So
but it's cold. It's cold like ice cream?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I know. I've heard it so many times, but it still does blow me away, quite honestly. Like we're not going to miss anything from this life, are we?
No, we're not going to miss anything. I mean, because there's a lot of stuff we're missing here. Okay.
Yeah.
We're there. Heaven is just a shadow. I mean, earth is just a shadow of heaven.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of a bad shadow because of Adam's fall, it was probably just like a sliver of heaven down on earth. Now it's like, the refuse,
Yeah.
Even the most
corrupted.
Yes. Well, even the most beautiful places on earth pale to what's in heaven.
Yeah.
The aromas and smells that I could remember smelling in heaven are just amazing. And it's hard to describe. I get excited when I start talking about it. I try not to get too wound up about it, but when you start talking about it, you just can't talk about it and be quiet.
I understand. I do. Well, keep going. Tell us some of the other things that.
Sure. Well, I got to see my mom and dad. I hadn't, my mom passed away about 15 years ago. Well, I guess at the time it had been about 11 years ago. And she looked nice and young, looked beautiful. My dad was about the same. He looked nice and young and very handsome. And, like I said, I had a full head of hair. I saw my brother. Now, my brother died about he was my older brother, and he passed away about 6 months after we got married, and I was everybody missed him because he was such a good guy. But, I was like, okay, I'm newly married. Teddy's been married for a long time. I got to pick his brain and figure out how to navigate the life of being married, and then he was gone. And I'm like, oh man, who am I going to ask, because I was close to him, not as close as I would have liked to have been, but I was fairly close with him. Anyway, it was so good to see him. And we hugged each other. I told him I missed him. I said, well, it's so good to see you. You've been gone for like 30 years. And he goes, it feels like I just got here,
Wow. Really?
Yeah. It's like.
So he wasn't just saying that. He was saying he was actually surprised. It had been 30 years.
He said that, there's like really no concept of time. So it's not like you just, there's really no time in heaven. So you don't really know how much earth time has passed, maybe. But we're going to be in heaven for eternity. And it's going to, what's that song? We've been there for 10,000 years.
10,000 years.
And
yeah. Seems like a day.
Yeah. So, so that's exactly what he was experiencing. And
And that's why I guess, you never get bored, right? Because boredom requires time.
Well, yeah, and there's always things to do. I mean, one of the biggest things I saw in heaven was a baseball game. And, God is
a baseball game.
I used to have some kind of strange ideas about heaven until I went there. In one of my conversations with Marzuki, he said people need to expand their concept of heaven. Because it's a lot more than what our little minds can sometimes comprehend or even think. But yeah, there's baseball in heaven. And there's probably football and basketball and other things too. But
what about soccer?
I'm sure it's probably there.
It's the world sport. It's got to be there.
All those Europeans have to have something to play,
Well, me too. I just got over a broken ankle. I play soccer still, and they broke my ankle. So hopefully no broken ankles there.
Well, the baseball game, nobody wore masks or vests, protection vests or stuff like that because you don't get hurt in heaven.
Interesting.
There's no injury.
I have wondered about that. I've wondered if, because some things, it's almost like the excitement or the thrill of them is a little bit of the danger on the edge of,
Well, but maybe with the fact since you're not going to get hurt, maybe you try a little harder or something. I don't know because you figure I'm not going to get hurt. But yeah, the baseball game was amazing. Because physics in heaven is not the same as physics on earth. In fact, so one of the things that the pitchers could do with the baseball in heaven was make a little corkscrew type throw to make the ball spin like a corkscrew, and made it very hard for the batters to hit. Now, I think there might have been some restrictions on how many times they could throw something like that, just because otherwise nobody would ever hit the ball or nobody would ever score a run and the game would go on forever. Who knows? But
that's so fascinating. I mean, that means there is some kind of physics and there is give and take still, like you can strike out or you can strike someone out.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about this the other day. Would it physically be possible to throw a pitch like that on Earth? And the only thing I could come up with was maybe that it would probably destroy your arm. You'd probably be able to throw it once, and your arm would just be. They couldn't do enough operations on your arm and wrist and shoulder to ever make it work again.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. So where were you watching this baseball game?
At this really nice baseball stadium. So like I said, physics is different. So this was like a multi-layer stadium as far as stadium seating. It was all kind of a nice U shape around this baseball diamond. But the sections floated on top of each other.
Oh, so it wasn't connected. It was just kind of.
Yes. The only thing that connected them was a staircase on the outside to go up to each level. So, you could either walk up the steps or I have a pretty good idea that you can just kind of think yourself up there and be there.
I was going to ask, is the movement, the travel of heaven, did you see, some people talk about kind of, they just were gliding or floating along.
I got to do a couple of things. So I got to walk. We did a lot of walking, and the walking
and
was
physically locomoting like normal.
Yes. But then there were times when I just kind of thought about something and I was there. So at one point in time, and I'm kind of having to jump to the end here somewhere, but I was in the throne room and Jesus wanted to show me something. So I used to play drums and I hadn't really got to play drums in a long time. But I was in the throne room and Jesus said, I've got something I want to show you. And we turned and took a couple of steps and I don't know where we ended up in a place that was more like a music studio. And he had this amazing set of drums there. And he said, these are going to be yours.
Really?
Yeah. So now we just kind of suddenly were there. I don't remember beam me up Scotty type thing, but we were just automatically there. And so, and I was just with Jesus. So he got me there. And, but it was like this, like I said, like like this really amazing looking music studio. So,
and what was the point of that? What was he saying in that?
so basically, you're going to get to play drums when you come to heaven. He wanted to show me the drums, and they were in this place that we just kind of suddenly were at.
Well, and again, I think that's part of what people miss is that, because one of the things I actually had a theory about is that a lot of the passions we weren't able to fulfill here, maybe we will be able to fulfill them in heaven. It's good that Psalm 37, delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart.
Right.
I don't think that means we get everything here, but the more I hear you guys talk, the more I think maybe that's literal in heaven.
Well, it's just that we grow up and we're taught things, and that's how we think things are. And we're kind of in a little box.
Mm-hmm.
And God's not in a box. There's no box that can fit God. And We'll just get bigger than the box without any effort. And so we think things are the way they are, but that's only here on earth. And things are much different in heaven. And that's why I think, 1 Corinthians 2, 9 and 10 is now my new favorite verse. And it basically is talking about how, no man has seen, no ear has heard, the amazing.
No eye has seen, no ear has heard. Yeah.
But he reveals them to those who love him through the Holy Spirit, his Spirit. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like the Lord showed me a lot of stuff that, most people just don't think about or dream about. And, I just was the fortunate, lucky person who got to see it all.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, it does expand your image, your ability to imagine what life on the other side will be like. Because I think we constrict it usually.
I think we do, because we're just trying to constrict it around what we understand here on earth.
Well, and even less. I mean, I think I always thought you're going to miss all the fun things. And then it took me a while to go, wait a second, God created me with that ability and thought all the fun things up. So why would I? Well,
people will say, well, how can you say that there's, baseball in heaven? Well, first off, I saw a game and, but ideas, I think, come from the Lord, and people may say you're taking this verse out of context, but, it says, as on earth, as in heaven, on earth, as it is in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? You're trying to bring heaven back down to earth is what they're trying to say. And so we don't know what all's in heaven. And we don't even realize that maybe Admiral Doubleday got the idea of baseball from God. Maybe it came to him in a dream. Maybe he had this vision that was given to him, or whoever invented basketball. They thought, hey, I got this idea, and that's how those things developed.
Did you get a sense from Jesus? Well, we kind of skipped because I don't know when you met with Jesus, but
that was like the last place I went.
Skipped a lot.
Yeah, we've kind of.
But did you get a sense that that he likes it, that we enjoy things here on earth?
Well, yeah, I think. Okay. So one of the things that was really surprising to me was Kathy had a miscarriage at some point in time in her pregnancy after had been pregnant for 4 or 5 weeks. And she felt like it was going to be a little boy, and she always liked the name Daniel. I'll let you explain it. So you go ahead, Kathy.
Well, I didn't know if it was a boy or a girl because it was only 4 or 5 weeks along. And this would have been like 19 years prior to when he went to heaven. So I named him Daniel. And when he was in heaven, he had the opportunity to meet our Daniel.
Really?
So we're walking,
wow.
We're actually on our way to the baseball game because Marzuka said, I want to take you someplace. And so we were actually heading towards a baseball stadium, and this little boy comes up to me, and he comes right up to me, and I stop and look at him, and he says, "Hi, my name's Daniel. I think you're my dad."
Wow.
And I'm like, whoa. And because I hadn't thought anything about this for, since I knew Kathy had lost the baby, and this little boy says, I said, well, Kathy was going to have a little baby, but she wasn't able to have him, and we were going to name him Daniel. And he said, I've been here since I was really little, and I've been growing up with a bunch of other little babies that were here. And so my
wow,
all that is to say, I think that, if you've lost a baby, had an abortion, had a miscarriage or something, your baby is going to be in heaven, and you're going to be able to see that baby.
And I've heard they're eager to meet you.
Yeah. And I told him, I said, well, Kathy would love to see you because, she's real pretty. And he goes, yeah, I know. I've seen her.
Oh,
so he's been able, people in heaven have some context of what's going on earth.
Did you get a sense of how much?
I know in a conversation with my dad, he said that I was lucky to be married to Kathy because she's taken really good care of me. So,
way to go, Kathy.
I was fighting for him in the spirit and in the natural.
Yeah.
So, and then I had made a comment to my mom about something, and she just said, yeah, I know. So, and my brother seemed to know that I was only going to be in heaven for a little bit.
Okay.
Because he had made a comment to me about, you're going to be having to leave soon. So, that's for Earth time, we're kind of guesstimating I might have been there somewhere between 2 and 3 weeks.
That's what it felt like the amount of your experience felt like.
No, that's how long he was in the coma. He was in the medically induced coma for 3 weeks. So about 3 weeks. Now he was on the ventilator for 45 days. He woke up while he was on the ventilator. Of course, he couldn't talk. At that point, he had a tracheostomy and, still couldn't talk because he's connected to the ventilator.
But my angel, Marzuko, when we were getting ready to leave, he said, well, I got to get you back to your body soon because you're going to be waking up pretty quick, and Kathy's going to be sitting there waiting for you. And so then I wake up, Kathy's sitting there waiting for me.
Interesting. So he knew.
Yeah.
He knew some of what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I recall, I think your brother told you, Ted, is Ted his name?
Yes, Ted.
Yeah, he told you some of the life of heaven and kind of, do we have purpose, jobs, mission? What do we do?
Well, I think we're going to have more to do after Jesus comes back and reigns for 1,000 years, because I think we're supposed to help rule and reign. Okay, so he went to baseball games. He also said he went to the Apostle Paul's Bible studies.
Really?
And I actually got to go to one.
What?
Yes. So it was.
So you met Paul.
I didn't meet Paul. I got to see Paul. He was teaching a Bible study. Now, I don't remember everything that was said, but I know that was Paul, and we were sitting up in kind of an amphitheater type environment, and we were kind of looking down at him.
So it was a big Bible study.
It was a big Bible study, but his voice carried very well, so it's not like he needed a microphone.
Oh, that's fascinating.
And I did get to meet Stephen, the martyr Stephen.
Really?
Yes, I got to meet him. And I was sitting outside talking to him. And the main thing that I can remember that he told me was, he said, don't fear man, just do what the Lord tells you to do.
Wow. And what was the context? How did you know it was Stephen? Like, did he come up to you?
I just knew who he was. There are some things in heaven you just know.
You know people by their essence?
Something like that. I mean, I knew that was Paul. I knew that was Stephen. Even though my parents may have looked a little bit different, but I knew that was them.
What did they look like? How'd they look different?
They were young. I mean, they looked extremely young. They looked like, I have seen pictures of them when they were younger, and they looked very close to that.
Wow. So cool. I've heard it so many times, but still, it's just like, wow, it's
And
going to be so great.
so one of the really amazing things that I got to see was, so like I said, Marzuka took me a lot of places, and we were walking over this little ridge, and when you got to the top and looked down, there was this huge complex. I'll put this in Earth terms. It was like a huge complex with all these, low-level buildings, or like one single story, but inside these were like huge horse stalls, and there was like thousands and thousands and thousands of horses in these stalls, and each stall for each horse was about 40 by 40, and the horses were amazing. They were beautiful, solid white, muscular, very swift, and we went through, went down some rows of these stalls, and some of the horses were feeding, some of them were getting brushed out by angels, some of them were pawing and snorting like they were ready to bust out and do something, and some of them were getting fitted with a light armor. And Marzuka told me that these are the Lord's warhorses, and that they were created just for the final battle to defeat the devil.
Really?
Yes.
He said all that to you.
He said all that to me, yes. And I said, well, what's going to happen to him after the battle? And he said, the Lord's going to give him to people who have served him well.
Interesting. Wow. And I mean, did they look like horses like you see here?
Oh yeah, they just look beautiful. They were just big and swift and muscular. I mean, they kind of paw and their muscles would flex, and they were beautiful. And I got to ride one.
Oh, really?
Yes. So
question, because Jim Woodford.
Yes.
I saw he was on your book, right?
Yes.
So he saw horses in heaven as well. And he talked about how when he went to pet him, it was kind of like the light. There was light off of him that kind of came with his hand and then sprung back. And I wondered, like, okay, well, but are they solid? I guess they are solid because Jesus rides them, or at least.
And I wrote.
Did you get any?
So we went through this whole building looking at all these horses, and then we went out to this huge field, and there's like tens of thousands of these horses marching around. The best way I can describe it is they were doing military maneuvers with angels on them. The angels were best dressed in battle gear, and they were doing all these military maneuvers. Is the best way for me to describe them. And
wow,
Jesus is actually in the very front of them, directing them.
On a horse?
On a horse.
Real? Oh my gosh, that's so wild.
So then after we saw that for a little bit, we went back inside the stall, and Marzuka said, I got a treat for you. Yeah, and before we had gone out, he went and talked to one of the other angels that was brushing one of the horses. And I didn't really think anything about it, but we walked back into the building, walked back to the other end of the building, and there were these two big, white, amazing horses right in front of us. And they both had saddles on them, and it was kind of big, and I was not real sure I could actually get up on it. And I said, Marzuka, how do I get on this thing? And he said, just think yourself onto the horse. And so I did, and next thing I know, I'm on the horse.
Okay, it's just so wild.
Believe me, yeah, it was wild for me too, and it's still wild for me when I'm sitting here talking about it. But then we got to go outside, and there's like this huge trail that went around this whole complex, and we got to ride the horses. Now, the horses, you could actually think to the horse what you wanted it to do, and it would do it.
It understood? It
understood my thoughts. Like if I thought, let's speed up, it would speed up. If I thought turn left, it would turn left. If I thought slow down, it would slow down.
Wow.
Now, everybody else I spoke to, I spoke real words to everybody. I didn't do any telepathy or anything like that. But
you were using your mouth, even with Marzuka?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, interesting. Because I would have thought it was because that telepathy isn't the right word, because what I've heard many times is more than just thoughts. It's a complete communication.
Yeah, but how did God create the earth? He spoke.
Yeah.
He spoke words into existence.
Yeah.
And he spoke things into existence with his words. So in heaven, words are still very important. They're still very much used. And case in point, my dad was a wood carver. After he retired, he had carved his whole life. But when he passed away and got to go to heaven, he was carving a lot more. And so
I saw that? I
saw that because I was actually in a room in his house or his mansion, whatever you want to refer to it as.
And it was a house like here?
Well, yes, except bigger and fancier and a lot nicer.
Really?
He had this carving room that he'd had all these carvings that he had created. And he was working on something. And he goes, he said, if I make a mistake, all I have to do is speak to my mistake and it will correct itself.
Interesting.
He said,
I've always wondered about that.
So because, faith has no restrictions in heaven. Here we struggle to have faith to do something because we're always under attack or we're distracted or whatever. You don't have that problem with faith in heaven because you just speak it. One of the places I went to in heaven was this big mountain range that Marzuka and I climbed up. And I just said, well, hey, I'm surprised there's no snow here because we lived in Colorado for 10 years. So I was used to seeing snow on mountain peaks. And I said,
because you were that high up, like would have been.
Yeah. We were probably high enough there should have been snow. And I said, well, I'm surprised there's no snow here. And he goes, well, if you want snow, you just speak it out.
And really? And did you?
No, because I told him, I said, I don't like snow. I don't really want to see snow. So
you had to live in it, but
I had to live in it and shovel my driveway out of 5 feet of snow a couple of times every winter. So
I know I when we moved from Chicago after 5 years, I swore I would never, ever shovel a driveway again. And 2 years ago, we had Snowmageddon in Austin and we had a foot of snow in my driveway. And I was like, okay, I'll never say never again.
Well, yeah. So I think Marzuka knew that I probably didn't want it, but I didn't want it because, like I said, we'd lived in Colorado, and I said, no, thanks. I'll just leave it the way it is.
Well,
go ahead, Kathy.
When we talk about faith, and I know this is the fun part, what he's saying, but keep in mind, I didn't know that any of this was happening. I was just going through hell on earth. When he was put on the ventilator on December 14 of 2021, and I knew I could not go in and see him. I wanted to just crumple to the floor in a pile of mush, and I was about to say out of my mouth, oh my God, I don't know what to do. But before I could get those words out, the Holy Spirit said to me, you know what to do. And I paused and I thought, yeah, I do. Because God's word is true. His word works every time. So I got to work and I made a document with 4 pages of healing scriptures. I had the nurse, whichever nurse happened to be on, take his phone, which was in his room. So I had him keep it charged and do a FaceTime. So I literally had to look at my husband in a coma on a ventilator, but I began to speak those scriptures over him for 1 hours every single day and praying those scriptures and just speaking them out, even though I got bad report after bad report after bad report. And I understand those reports. I understand what the labs mean. And I understand what the ventilator settings mean because I am a physician. So, it wasn't like I could just be blissfully ignorant. I wasn't. I knew how bad it was. He had a very slim chance of survival. And all the complications that we went through time after time, he would just do a little bit better and then bam, he would plummet. He'd get another pneumonia and kidney failure and, withdrawal from drugs. And it was just horrible. So if in this earth, we have got to believe God's word. We have got to have faith. And one of my new favorite scriptures is 2 Corinthians 4:17-18, that tells us that our light and momentary affliction, and you go, oh, this is light and momentary? Wow. But keep in mind it's momentary because the next verse says that we are to look at the unseen while we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are unseen, because the things which are seen are temporary, but the things
Right.
unseen, which is what he was experiencing, are eternal. God's
Right.
word is eternal. And we have to learn to look with the eyes of our sanctified imagination, because I had to see him home. I had to see him driving his car again. I had to see him doing all the normal things again, and not in a coffin. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what the enemy wanted me to think. So every
Right.
those bad thoughts came to me, I would have to cast them down, just like the word tells us, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of Christ, bringing into captivity everything to the obedience of Christ.
Every thought.
I had to control my thoughts. I had to speak God's word no matter how I felt. And sometimes I would just feel like I couldn't go on. I felt like I was being squished in a trash compactor, and it was going like this, because it wasn't only, I had a lot of peripheral things that happened during this time too, that would just add to the horrible stress and everything. So I was being squished. But as I would begin to speak God's word, after I would get through about a page and a half of those healing scriptures, I would begin to feel the presence of the Lord. And I would begin to get my perspective back, that this is temporary. It doesn't matter how bad it is, it's temporary. And what I could see by the eye of faith was eternal, and he was getting better and coming home. And so that's kind of the message on this side of the veil, that we need to be able to see the unseen realm and receive miracles from God.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know I got a early copy of you guys' book and was able to skim through and read it. And it's great. You put a lot of that in there as well, because I think this together does just that. It helps people as we're going through all of this, and it doesn't feel temporary, and it feels like sometimes you're not going to make it. But I think you're right, and what Steve is sharing helps us set our minds, like Colossians 3 says, set our minds on things above, where our life is hidden with Christ in the heavenlies, not on things of the earth, because they're passing away.
Well, even when I came back, woke up from my coma and was experiencing all the things on earth, I had to start using, Kathy. When I was out of it, Kathy could pray and I would be quiet, and I wouldn't, she didn't have to worry about what I was thinking or my faith, because she was praying for both of us basically. But when I woke up, I had to start doing things for me on my own. Like I had to learn how to walk again, had to learn how to chew food again. I had to learn how to be determined to get back to doing the things that I wanted to do. Yes, she was seeing me do those things, but I had to see myself doing those things too. And it was a lot of work. I mean, I spent a couple of years rehabbing and getting in shape. I mean, I'm doing pretty good now, but that was just like, I didn't just get out of the hospital and walk out, man. It was a lot of work.
Well, it's definitely a fight of faith, and I mentioned earlier that I was sending the angels to his room because I couldn't be there. So I was sending it protection. Psalm 91, he gives his angels charge over us to keep us in all our ways. And so when I would do that, I believed that was what was happening, and God was protecting him. One time, though, I was on the phone with my dear friend Marilyn, who lives on the other side of the world. So it was like 12 hours difference, and she and her husband are like our best friends. So I would be up praying, and it's day here and night there, and so we had these shifts of prayer. And so Marilyn and I were praying on the phone, and all of a sudden she said, and she didn't know that I had been praying and sending the angels every day, but she said, Kathy, the Lord is showing me, I see it, I'm in his room. He's showing me what I see. Steve in the bed, I see the ventilator, I see the monitors, I see all this equipment, I see him on the ventilator, and there are angels all over this room. And there are huge angels at the door, and they will not let anything evil come in this room. And when she said that, I was like, wow,
It worked.
I didn't tell you that, but that's what I've been doing. I've been sending those angels to protect him. And that's what they were there doing. And so our prayers avail much, even though you don't see it. See, I pray and I have to walk by faith. He sees things. Even now, he's seen Marzuka since he's been back. So, I mean, I don't necessarily see things like he
Yeah, me either.
But I have to go on faith, you know. And I always think, well, blessed is the one who doesn't see and still believes, right? So
that's our verse. That's my verse. Could you not let me see? He sometimes reminds me like, no, you're wrong. I'm letting you see through the research gift I've given you through all these people's stories. But you know, that's great news because there are 100 warrior angels surrounding my 2 little granddaughters because I prayed for that this morning. So that's awesome.
Yes, definitely. You know, in our daughter, we have our daughter, she's grown up now, but when she was little, she could see in the spirit as well, our younger daughter. And one time we were actually in a restaurant and there was a thunderstorm and the lights flashed on and off. And then she's about, I don't know, 5, 6, 7. She said to me, Mom, I see angels everywhere. And she said, I see them behind every single person. So there were 8 of us at our table and behind each of us was an angel. And she started to describe them. Some had swords, some had bow and arrow. And they were all like at the ready. Saw angels behind every single person, customers, waitresses, everyone in that restaurant. But all the other angels, except for the ones around our table, had their hands behind their back. And they didn't have the weapons. So
what do you think that means?
Interesting. Well, we were all born again at our table serving God. And I think that if you're not serving the Lord, you know, your angels are somewhat hindered in being able to help you because
they're trying, but yeah,
able to, but our angels were all ready. And so, you know, just to say that she sees things as well, you know, and there is a whole realm that we can't contact with our physical senses, but we do have the ability and the authority through Jesus to affect that unseen realm.
Yeah. Well, and I think that is, and many of you who have had near-death experiences have testified to that on the other side, you saw that the prayers made here have effect there, and God does dispatch angels. They are his ministers, and it does have effect. I know it's really bolstered my prayer life. You know, maybe because I just have a bad imagination, but it's probably why I need to hear them over and over again. I'm slow.
Well, you know, I think prayer is so important, and I don't know that we give enough importance to prayer and to praying.
Well, we think it's not doing anything, right? I'm wasting my time, and that's just the opposite.
That's what the enemy wants you to think. But I can tell you, after my mom went to heaven in 2018, you know, I got more serious about really being, just have a really good prayer time every day. But it's hard to pray in the living room. You know, it's kind of hard. It's distractions and things like that. So I had put all my mom's stuff in boxes and stuck it in a room at the top of the stairs and shut the door. And because I had a hard time praying with the distractions in the middle of the house, you know, I said, Lord, do I need to go to the prayer tower or what do I need to do here? So the Holy Spirit said, well, you have that room upstairs. You could use that. And I thought, no, I got all those boxes there. I don't want to deal with all that stuff from my parents. And then the Lord said, well, you could clean it out. No. I didn't want to, but I was obedient. And I did. That was a couple of years before he ended up in the hospital. And so I had my prayer room already established. I had it all set up and I used it every single day. And, you know, people have rooms in their house to put a big screen theater in and rec room and all kind of stuff that make no eternal difference for anything. Why don't we have prayer rooms in our house? And if it's a closet, a area, a corner of a room, we need to have a place that we can go and meet God and know, because I'd get to the last few steps going upstairs and there would be this excitement that would come over me in spite of what I was dealing with here, that I'm going to meet God and I'm going to be in that room and I'm going to absolutely hear from him today, you know, because we need that. We need to be able to focus. We're too distracted with everything.
Yeah.
Well,
that's so good.
One thing about you wondering if your prayers are doing any good. So I was a bit surprised to see my dad because I wasn't sure because I never really was. I didn't know what he hadn't, most of his life he didn't go to church. He started going to church with my mom towards the end of his life, but I didn't know if it was more so just because she didn't want to go by herself or if he was actually going because he. So he, I was talking to him and he said, you know, I'm so glad people didn't quit praying for me. He said, I know there may not have been much of a change on the outside, but my heart is what changed. And so, yeah, so he told me that. And so we can't give up on our prayers because, you know, because the deal is, you know, God doesn't want, it's his will that everybody would be saved. And so we have to pray that. We have to pray, Lord, I know it's your will for him to be saved. Bible also says that he has the king's heart in his hand and he can change it any way he wants to. You know, so I just kind of like lower that down to somebody in my family or saying, Lord, I know you've got their heart in your hand and you can move it any way you want to. And I know you want them to be saved. So Lord, that's what I'm asking you to do. I want them to be saved and I'm asking you to move their heart in that direction. You know, so, you know, we may not see anything, but we don't know what's going on the inside. And that's what God looks at. God looks at God looks at the heart.
Well, that's a great reminder too, that, you know, we don't know, but we don't need to know. We need to do our part, right? We pray for people. We tell them how much God loves them, what Jesus has done to make a way, you know, that we don't have to earn our way there. We don't have to play a good religious game. We don't even have to sit in church every Sunday. There's good reason to. I led a church for many, many years, but that's not what does it. It's the heart. It's a heart given to God.
Right.
So speaking of, let's wrap up our time hearing about your encounter with Jesus.
Okay. So the last place I got to go to in heaven was actually going into the throne room. And the building into the throne room is pretty amazing. It's got, it's actually the building I saw, and I can only tell you what I saw, but it had the creation, God's creation. It was like carved into the side of this throne room. It had things on earth. It had animals on earth. It had scenes from space in it. And it was just really amazing. I mean, you could look at it and knew what you were looking at. And so then we go into these doors automatically open. It was kind of like, you know, you go to the grocery store and boom, the doors open, except in heaven, they just sense that you're coming and they open up. So, and we walked into this big kind of archway. It was probably 30 or 40 feet long. Distance is a little tough to gauge in heaven some, but it was, you know, a number of steps in there. And it was arched and it had all these just amazing, you know, the floor was like, was gold, except it was like a clear gold. You could like almost see through it. And then we got into the throne room. The throne room was, you know, you saw this stage that had like 7 steps leading up to it. And there were 2 thrones. And behind the thrones was like a huge rainbow. And then there was thunder and lightning. And then off to to my right, which would have been God's left, I saw the Ark of the Covenant and I saw the menorah. And they were up on the stage with the Lord. And then like I said, there's like thunder and lightning. And I saw Jesus sitting on the right-hand side of the Father, but the throne that had God on it was just bright light. I couldn't make out a figure, but it was just light just emanating. And it was not painful to look at it. I mean, it was bright, but it didn't hurt my eyes. And I didn't feel like I had to, squint or anything like that. So kind of two things happened that I'll tell you about real quick. So we walked in and we walked in a couple of feet, and then Marzuka, the angel, kind of kneels down on one knee, bows his head, but he pushes me forward. He puts his hand on the middle of my back and pushes me on forward. So I walked up closer to the throne, and then Jesus comes down off the throne, comes down the steps, and comes right to me. And he says, I have a couple of things I want to show you. So one with these two pictures that we had talked about earlier. He showed me a picture of my body laying on the ground, and it was kind of a grayscale picture. There wasn't any color to it. And so I'm not looking very good. Okay. It's hard to look good in grayscale,
Mm-hmm.
And he said, this is you, but you're going to be just fine. And then he showed me the next picture, and he said, this was a color picture. It was a nice color. I had color in my cheeks. I looked a lot better, but I'm still the same position. And he said, this is you, but you're going to be just fine. He said, because you're healed. Now, I was wearing, there's a color picture, so it looks like I've got on like red and white striped pajamas is kind of the best way I can describe these. And he said, you're going to be just fine because you're healed by my stripes and my righteousness. So I'm healed by his blood and I'm healed by his righteousness. And so then he gave me this.
And that was the stripe, the white and the red?
Exactly.
So he was showing you the significance that he's the one who's healing you.
Yes. And so, so then he gave me this big hug. He told me he loved me. I told him I loved him. And it was like the most amazing hug you could ever imagine, because first off, you're in the throne room, you feel peace, you feel security, you feel protection. There's like nothing going to bother you. In fact, you really pretty much feel that way anywhere in heaven. It's just like the most amazing place that you feel protected at. But in the throne room is even more so, because Jesus and the Father are both in there, and nothing's going to bother you. And you just feel love and protection. And so then he told me that, he said, you saw my war horses. And I said, yes, Lord, I saw your war horses. And he said, they're preparing for battle. And I said, so when's this going to happen? And he just said, very soon. Okay. Now I got the sense very soon is a lot sooner than most people want to think it's really soon. But
really?
I'm not going to put a date on anything, but you can look at they're supposed to know the season. We're supposed to know the time and season. And so, so we have to look at what's going on in the world and seeing where are we going? What's the direction we're heading here? So we just have to be aware. I mean, Jesus was talking to him and said, hey, you can tell what the weather's going to be like by the sun in the morning and all this kind of stuff. And he said, but you need to know what's going on now. And
you can tell when summer's coming, when the fig tree blossoms.
Yep. So we need to be able to tell what the season of the earth is in, not just whether it's seasons, winter or summer, but the time that we're in. And so then, right after, and then he told me, looked right at my eyes, looked right in my eyes, put his hands on my shoulder, and he says, I got work for you to do when you get back, and I'll tell you what it is at the right time. And then right after that is when he showed me my drums. And then right after that I was back in the throne room walking out with Marzuka.
That's just so amazing. I was a drummer. I taught my son drums. Yeah.
Okay.
And, but I actually want to be able to sing. I could never sing.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Let me tell you just a quick thing. So Marzuka, we were listening to this choir. My mom had told me when I talked to her, she said, "Oh, your grandmother and I are in one of the choirs," And I kind of thought, wow, I don't ever recall Mom and Grandma being able to sing all that well. And so Marzuka and I are walking, and he said, "This is the choir that your mother and grandmother are in." And I'm sitting here listening, trying to find a bad note somewhere. just all beautiful. It was just a beautiful sound. And I thought, wow, they can sing in heaven. So, hey, there's hope for you.
Really? Well, good. That's good to know.
So,
That is good.
so when we were leaving the throne room,
Well, first, what did Jesus look like? Everybody wants to know.
well, when I saw him, he looked like he was about 6'1", maybe 6'2", a little tall, had kind of long hair, little, just kind of touching his shoulders, parted in the middle, had a neatly trimmed beard, had on a white robe with a purple sash going across his chest. He had deep, deep blue eyes. Now, somebody was saying one time that, well, he was Middle Eastern, he's in a Middle Eastern country. So most people there have brown eyes. But then somebody also said they were doing some research and that he was from the tribe of Judah. And it's not uncommon for people in the tribe of Judah to have blue eyes.
That's what I wrote in Imagine Heaven, because of how many of you had said he had either blue or blue-green or blue-green that almost goes to a yellow, kind of like alive, the color alive in a way that, and so I've wondered about that. But yeah, even Heidi, who I told you about, the 16-year-old girl who also saw Andromeda, well, she was Jewish and she believed in God. She prayed to God, even though her dad had always told her Jesus is the biggest hoax ever perpetrated on mankind. But she meets Jesus when she died, and she knew he was the God she had always prayed to, even though she wasn't allowed to use his name. And of course, it makes sense because there's only one God,
right?
And he has revealed himself in Jesus. And so but she said, I never told this part because I know I'm Jewish and Jews have brown eyes, but his eyes were like a blue-green. And so, and of course she loves Jesus and follows him today. All these people do. I don't see how you couldn't. That's the thing that blows my mind.
Well, let me tell you this one last thing. So when Marzuka and I were leaving the throne room, we'd walked outside and I said, so tell me, Marzuka, how come you knelt down, but you pushed me forward? And he said, because the Lord is my master. I serve him. He said, you are family. You don't have to crawl to God. You can go right up to him. So the word says that we can go boldly before the throne of God. And so he's just basically telling me, you can go boldly up to the Father. You can go boldly to Jesus, because he's, like you said, I serve him. He's my master. I have to bow down to him. And he goes, I choose to, because you're family. See, now you wouldn't make your kids crawl to you to come sit on your lap.
Wow. It just shows you what the Lord has done for us, doesn't it? That's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
We wouldn't
and how true his word is.
Exactly. Yeah. The word is alive and well. And we read the word, and sometimes we don't see the depth in it sometimes, but we can go boldly before him because we are his sons, we are his daughters, we are, we may be adopted, but hey, he loves us just like we're the real deal, we're grafted in. So, there's so many things about the Bible that just are so more alive for me now, just because I've had my experience. And,
I imagine.
So when I share these things, I'm just like, oh, this is what it really means,
And it's hard not to get excited about it, isn't it? Because it's going to be the best thing ever. Yeah. Well, you guys tell us, when's your book coming out? And I've Been to Heaven is the name of it. Right? Is that behind you there?
Yeah, it's I've Been to Heaven, and it is coming out October 14th. It's for sale on a lot of your favorite places to buy books. It's on.
It's already out there available.
Yes, it's on Amazon. It's on the Baker Publishing Place. It's on Goodreads. It's on. Our website is steveandkathyb.com, and that's Kathy with a K. And there's a products page. It's got our book, and then it's got about 7 or 8 or 9 links that you can click on to go buy it at your favorite book place.
Okay. Well, great. Well, that's one of the most fabulous, I don't know what a better word, like just awe-inspiring near-death experiences and just stories as well of, what you had going on, Kathy, back, fighting and praying and really suffering while Steve is having this incredible. You ever get him back for that? Like, look what you put me through.
I wanted to call the book Joy in Heaven and Hell on Earth.
Yeah.
Go for it. But really, that's what it was, because as much joy as he had. And one interesting thing, Ephesians 3:20 is absolutely true. God can do exceedingly abundantly above all we ask or think. Because when Steve was doing so poorly in the hospital, I was praying and asking Jesus to walk into that hospital room and have an encounter with Steve and heal him. And that was my highest and best imagination, would be that Jesus himself would walk in the hospital room and Steve would see him and then he would be healed. Well, God did something way better than that.
Yeah.
Him where he is.
Yeah.
All the way to the throne room and gave him an incredible tour of heaven, with Marzuka as his guide. So we do not realize how much God wants to do for us when we pray in faith, when we trust him, when we just believe what his word says. Don't pray out of your head and make things up. Read the word and see what it says, and then pray according to what it says.
Yeah. So good. Well, you guys, thank you so much for taking the time to let me interview you today. It was such a pleasure.
Well, thank you so much for inviting us on. And like I said, I get kind of excited sometimes. So if I rambled too much, sorry.
No, it's awesome.
We loved it. We love the opportunity. So thank you so much.
It's awesome. Well, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Well, wasn't that wild? I mean, heaven is going to be so much better than you can imagine, than I can imagine. And I've done a lot of imagining. It is really going to be amazing. And more importantly, it reminds us that this world is temporary. It's temporal. All of the trials, all the suffering you have to endure, all the challenges are temporary. And, just like Jesus said in Matthew 19, there's nothing that you give up in this life that you're going to miss if you follow the Lord. He said, if you follow me, there's nothing you're going to leave behind here that you're not going to get even better and more of in the life to come. And I know that probably stretches some of your, imaginations when it comes to heaven. But God's a creator of every good thing we've ever enjoyed or experienced. And so he wants us to live for him and for eternity. So I hope this blessed you in helping you do that a little better. And until next time, God's blessings.